Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, the KidsMatter Essentials. Today is all about what you need to know for bringing KidsMatter to your place. And shortly I'll be joined by a colleague of mine, Rita Johnson, and we will be actually talking about what you need to know, but a few tips to help you make it happen at your place as well. I'm going to welcome Rita to the webinar, and Rita's going to do an acknowledgement of country for us. Hi Rita.
Hi Amelia, and hello everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today, and particularly during NAIDOC week. So I hope everyone's been having some great NAIDOC week celebrations. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of land where I'm sitting now in Sydney, and they're the Gadigal and the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, and I want to pay my respects to elders past, present and future. And I'd also like to acknowledge the strong connection and commitment to land, to family and to children that's an absolutely essential part of culture and the contribution that this makes to all our lives. And I know everyone who's joined us is also sitting on traditional country. And
excellent. Thank you, Rita. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on the Ghana land at the moment, so I'm a little bit away from you, Rita, but we feel very close in this online space. I'd also like to point out to everyone who's potentially new to KidsMatter that KidsMatter Early Childhood, we've been very committed to deepening our knowledge of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives and draw on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander pedagogy in ways to guide and strengthen the work that we do and the resources that we develop. So we'd really like to acknowledge how essential that has been to help us grow into the initiative that we are today. So that's a little bit about Rita and I, and a bit about the initiative. Before we get right into the facts and the figures and everything else you need to know about getting started with KidsMatter, we want to know a little bit about the people that are attending today. Rita, in your experience, why do people often register for events like this to find out overviews, that sort of stuff?
Mostly people are concerned about how to respond to children's behaviour. That's sort of one of the key issues, and all the research that's out and about in mental health now is helping educators understand that something like KidsMatter, which is about early childhood mental health, is a framework that's really going to help them grapple with some of the issues that they're facing in their services.
Excellent. Yeah, definitely. And that's sort of reflected. We'll stop the poll now in the responses that people have actually popped up, and there was 54% of people were interested in knowing more about KidsMatter Early Childhood and about the early childhood mental health and exploring how to support children's social and emotional wellbeing. The clear winners. Okay, so thank you everyone for sharing those few details about yourself with us. Now let's move on to looking at everything you need to know to make a decision about whether KidsMatter is the right thing for your place right now. So today we're going to explore a few things, and it'll effectively be around the significance of relationships and how that informs KidsMatter and what you do with relationships throughout KidsMatter. We'll look at some facts and some details about what KidsMatter is and what you need to do, but also the benefits you might get from it. And we'll look a little bit at how KidsMatter is structured. You can see up on the slide there's a symbol that says plan, do, review. That's pretty much, in essence, the structure of KidsMatter, but we'll unpack that a little bit more. So before we do that though, Rita, let's talk a little bit about relationships.
Yeah. So as I was mentioning evidence-based research before, the research is really clear now that good mental health, a good life, a happy life is founded basically in positive relationships. And this is the underpinning of KidsMatter. It's the underpinning of the early years learning framework. And we know that when we're in a good relationship, when we have friends who are positive, when our relationships are positive, we feel a lot better. And it's the same for all the people in your community, for the children, for the families, for your educated team, and even for the wider community that you're working with. So relationships are the heart of good mental health, and they're at the heart of KidsMatter. Relationships are what make the young brain grow, and they are also what helps the adult maintain good mental health, those positive relationships. So in KidsMatter, we talk about relationships with children, families, educators, and the whole community, and the KidsMatter team and other KidsMatter participants. We also talk about relationships between children, between families, and between your educators. So that's relationships.
Yes, lots of relationships going around, and one of the key things around KidsMatter is that opportunity to connect with other educators too.
Yep.
I agree around that. So I'm sure we'll highlight a bit more about relationships as we go through the webinar, especially how they're essential for KidsMatter and for growing healthy minds. Now let's look at some of the facts. Money is a key thing that comes to mind whenever we consider any sort of professional learning or any sort of initiative or program that we might be implementing across any workplace. KidsMatter Early Childhood, just so everyone's aware, it's a funded initiative and it's funded by the Department of Health and Beyond Blue. And it has created what it is today through partnership with Beyond Blue, the Australian Psychological Society and Early Childhood Australia. So this funded initiative, it means that there's resources that are freely available to you on the website. So other than the cost of your internet, potentially some printing, there's few other costs, except for one probably thing that you might want to talk a little bit about, Rita, around time costs.
Yeah, recently when I've been talking to early childhood services and I've said, what are your key issues? They say, children's behaviour and time. And I think everyone can probably relate to that. So the cost around time in KidsMatter could be financial. So it might mean that you need to give educators more release time so that they can so you can all do the professional learning as a whole team, because the professional learning in KidsMatter is for everyone, and it works best when everyone does it, so everyone's on the same page. But the other thing about time is sometimes, many times services find time they didn't know they have. So they've often moved things out of staff meetings, like housekeeping things, onto email or onto a closed Facebook page, so they can actually dedicate their staff meetings to the KidsMatter professional learning. So that would be the only financial cost, would be paying for release time to do the professional learning, even though there's other ways around that as well if you can't do that.
Yeah, so it sounds like there are ways to almost shift the time costs that are involved to reduce the financial costs. Yeah, that's a great thing to point out too, Rita, thank you. And the other fact that I'm triggered by looking at this screen is that whole notion of being online and being IT ready. KidsMatter is essentially all online. You can access everything at your fingertips, and you can even connect with people at your fingertips by clicking the link and signing up to different meetings. There are some things that you need to do to be IT ready, but it is important to remember that it's not as daunting as it might seem, and we can actually, we can support you in developing the skills and finding ways around all sorts of technology troubleshooting or taking up new technology. So in essence, though, what you would need is an internet connection, a computer, a webcam and a mic. But it's also good to note that most of the things that we do, you can actually connect by your mobile device as well. So there's always a way to get connected with us online. A couple more facts is around the strong evidence base. Now, Rita, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, the evidence base around relationships and things like that. There's two essential models that underpin everything that you will learn when you undertake KidsMatter professional learning. And these are the risk and protective factors model and the Bronfenbrenner's socio-ecological model. Now, risk and protective factors, they're basically things that are in life that either protect children's mental health and well-being or put their mental health and well-being at risk. In your first Getting Started event, you will go through quite a lot of detail about what risk and protective factors are, and also how you can apply them across your workplace to help support children's mental health and well-being. Before we move on, though, I just want to really highlight that the more protective factors that we put into the world of a child, the So this influence and impact the risk factors could potentially have. And it's also really worth noting that risk factors don't mean that a child will absolutely develop a mental health difficulty or have concerns. It just increases the risk. It's not an absolute thing. And Brock and Brenna will also be touched on in the first Getting Started session. And in essence, it's really about acknowledging that children don't grow up in a vacuum, that they grow up in relationship with other things. They grow up in relationships with other people, with culture, with systems, and each of those things actually has an influence on them. So just remember that from your very first Getting Started, you will be focusing on these things in your professional learning. Rita, can you explain a little bit more about how the KidsMatter professional learning has been created from a framework and
Sure.
how that actually is influenced by these two as well, these two models?
Yes, so Amelia was talking about risk and protective factors, and I was talking about the importance of relationships earlier. So they would be a protective factor. And so if you look at that image of the KidsMatter framework, there's 4 elements there. There's the big red circle around the outside and the 3 circles in the middle. And these are all connected to those risk and protective factors. So what we do in KidsMatter is we learn more about community, connection, belonging and inclusion, which is that first big red circle, and about feeling safe. So you know yourself, if you feel safe, you feel welcome, you feel like you belong, your mental health is better supported. So that's the very first thing we look at, is how inclusive and connected is our community. Then the evidence also shows that children who have good social emotional skills, and that's the orange circle, have much better mental health and well-being. And so we have a focus on helping children develop their social emotional skills. And evidence also shows that in the blue circle, partnerships with family are just as essential as those social emotional skills. So planning in partnership, helping parents and family members connect with other family members to learn more about parenting, communicating clearly and effectively with families is really critical also for early childhood mental health. And then the 4th area, which is the green area, is actually identifying children quickly and referring them effectively. One of my pilot sites that I worked with them 6 or 7 years ago now, when I asked the director a few years after they'd finished the initial KidsMatter training, you know, so what's changed in your service? And the first thing she said was, we don't wait. And by that she meant, we don't wait to see how a child is going. We don't wait till their 2nd year at preschool. If we think there's a problem, we are now able to identify it and get really effective at referral straight away. But I also want to say, you know, there's a big question about why you would bother to do all this learning. And I want to share with you really, and this framework is the heart of what we're talking about. And when services engage with this framework, the evidence of the evaluation of the pilot, and also what we as facilitators have seen, is that things change in services. You know, children are more calm and more happy. Educators feel more confident. They feel better able to respond to children's behaviour effectively. They're more patient and they're happier in their work. Families are more relaxed and happy. And as I said earlier, children with difficulties are much more effectively identified and referred to extra support services. Basically, you'll end up with a very calm and happy centre. And I've got a great example just recently. One of my KidsMatter centres who just completed component 1, they had a new director. And when I spoke to that director the first time, she said, yeah, when I came to that service, I noticed something was completely different. The children were so calm. Everyone was really relaxed. It was just so fantastic. And I was so happy to hear that after just completing 1 component, this early childhood service had experienced really deep and profound changes in how everything was happening.
That's a great story, Rita. Thank you so much for that. And it really does show that KidsMatter is hopefully doing what we set out to do. KidsMatter was developed with a clear intention of supporting educators to work with children in ways that promote and protect wellbeing, and being in a calm, happy, safe place is certainly filled with protective factors for mental health and wellbeing. So we'll talk a little bit about the aims of what KidsMatter strives to achieve. And the first thing that KidsMatter aims to do is to improve educator capacity to respond to mental health needs of children, which is something you talked about earlier with services not waiting anymore, getting in and undertaking early intervention as they see appropriate. It also strives and aims to improve childhood mental health and wellbeing, and on the flip side, reduce mental health problems that might exist amongst children as well. Rita, there's a couple of other aims. Do you want to share with everyone what they are?
Yeah, and those two aims are about that green circle that we looked at in the last slide, and they're about greater support for children who are experiencing these mental health difficulties and support for their families, because as we said earlier, the child just isn't this isolated being. And then improving networks and working relationships with health and community services, which is really critical to get good results.
Yeah, definitely. And it is really about connecting a whole heap of pieces and putting them together in the best way to create that protective space for children's mental health and wellbeing. And I guess that's another point about KidsMatter, is it actually integrates really easily with other frameworks and programs. And whatever state or local initiatives that people might be implementing, this is partially because of its evidence-based, but it also aligns really closely with the National Quality Standard and the Early Years Learning Framework and other similar curriculum documents. Do you agree, Rex?
I absolutely agree, and I've recently been looking at KidsMatter really as an umbrella that under which everything else you do can fall. KidsMatter can inform and guide your actions, as Amelia said, in all those frameworks and in all the different varying things that you might be doing with your service. Because really, without good mental health, you don't have anything.
Yeah, definitely. So KidsMatter is about a whole of setting approach. So it means we're working in ways to support all children and all families and all educators. And when you catch up with a facilitator at a getting started event or in your follow-up event, you'll actually hear stories of how it travels into the wider community as well. So there'll be opportunity in a moment, and also at the getting started event to play and explore the professional learning resources that are available to you. But let's just talk a little bit about the things that you can connect with and consider when you're engaging with KidsMatter. It's important to note that KidsMatter is a continuous learning and improvement process, as well as a professional development package in essence. So one great thing about KidsMatter is, though, that it can be tailored in ways to suit educators at your place. So you can direct learning into areas of interest, into areas of need, into areas of strength as well. So, and you can focus it on an individual level, with teams or with communities. Rita, do you want to discuss some of the connections that KidsMatter professional learning has with other everyday life and initiatives, things like that?
So as I was saying earlier about KidsMatter being that umbrella, it actually links to everything else you do, from nappy change routines to parent nights to actual social emotional skill development in children. And it's continuous improvement. It's not about, learning a course and getting a pass mark. It's actually about learning a bit, doing a bit, reviewing a bit, learning a bit, doing a bit, reviewing a bit. When we bring that mental health lens to current practice, it also improves practice. Often when we learn a bit, we also need to look at what it is we're already doing that supports children's mental health. And the one example I often use is that we always say good morning to children, and we might say it because we've been told to, or because we like doing it, or because, because it's good manners. But when we understand that every time we say good morning to a child, we're building their brain, we're building their mental health for the rest of their lives, not just for the few days or weeks or months or years they're with you, then those good mornings becoming much more intentional and just so much more meaningful. So often the things that you do in KidsMatter can be really simple. Like one service decided that what one of their action plans would be that they would say good morning to all the parents who came their way in the morning, not just the parents of the children who they were in care of. And another service decided that they had to completely repaint their preschool room because it had a giant red and purple mural, which wasn't particularly relaxing for children's or adult mental health and well-being. And I heard a story recently too about a service where the relationships were really good, but the organisation was like getting in the way of the relationships with children. And KidsMatter also helps you to review and assess all your organisational structures so they don't get in the way of those relationships and supporting children's mental health and well-being. So KidsMatter is a journey, and as you progress through that journey, you just learn more and more, and you change the way you do things on a long-term basis.
Yeah, thanks, Rita. That was sort of heaps of information and some great examples of how KidsMatter is happening in action. I guess now we are actually going to give you a brief overview of the different ways you can get KidsMatter happening at your place. So clear things to remember as we are talking about these approaches is that there's no one way, there's no one right way to do it. It's about working out what suits you in your context the best way possible. It's also important to remember that you can start one approach and then swap around or return to it at another point. So mix and match as much as you like as well. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the 8 in 1 year as well. As Rita said, there's 16 topics overall in the KidsMatter professional learning, and some people choose to start at component 1 professional learning topics and move their way around. What we've also found that there could potentially be another way to do it, and this approach here actually reduces the initial 16 topics to an initial 8 topics. We still want people to consider going on throughout the next 16 topics, but this is really a package that we're suggesting that will help you make choices about where to focus your professional learning. It has a strong emphasis on shifting your focus regularly and outcomes for learning. It is useful for informing and demonstrating national quality standard requirements, and it also gives you the opportunity to cover all the components that Rita's been talking about within the space of a year, and then be able to actually springboard off of that into the subsequent topics as you see fit to suit your context and your purpose. The other thing about these core topics is it has a strong practice base, and it highlights many of the essential tools and processes that KidsMatter Early Childhood actually promotes to support mental health and well-being across education. Regularly, and then springboarding onto more self-directed approaches. So I'm going to leave you with that, and Rita, you're going to talk a little bit about KidsMatter Ways, because you said they find out more.
I mentioned KidsMatter Ways earlier. Yep. So KidsMatter Ways are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander resources, and they're less text heavy because the KidsMatter initial resources were very text-based. And these resources are considered an integral part of KidsMatter. They're not an additional thing that you would do, but you can access these resources and use them at any point in your KidsMatter journey through the topics. And so we've got a great ebook called Learning on Country, which gives you just a really good foundation to how to start to develop relationships with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. We've got the KidsMatter Ways action chart, which have got fantastic reflective questions on the back and things to think about and consider. And then on the front of them, they've got photo images and more text where you can actually put your own photo image and put some of your own text in there. And so you can actually use language in there, change it to other languages if you want to. We've got Yarning Up KidsMatter podcasts, and so they're little podcasters, some interviews / yarning with people all over Australia, both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal, about all the elements of KidsMatter. And then the KidsMatter team developed a set of what we call KidsMatter Ways symbols, which are symbols that are images of some of the key ways of being that we want to use in KidsMatter. So the KidsMatter Ways material helps us to really also the KidsMatter Ways material helps us to really often get out of our sort of more Western linear brain thinking and consider more many different ways of knowing, being and doing. And you can actually work through a lot of the professional learning using these resources as well.
Thanks, Rita. The next approach that we're going to briefly look at is the school-based service pathways. Now, this approach is especially for early childhood educators who are working within a school, so that you might be co-located or you might be part of a school. So it is important if you're in those situations, particularly if your school is engaging with KidsMatter primary professional learning as well, it can be really useful to integrate the two professional learning and perfectly reflect what a true whole of school approach would actually look like. Because the whole of school, whole of service concept is a core principle of KidsMatter. There are many ways that early childhood services in schools do integrate, and we can actually support you, the KidsMatter team, in how to decide which is the best approach for your context. There are a number of benefits in using the approach. It can immediately increase the connections that colleagues have within the community and across the whole school site. It can also make the needs of children who are aged under 5 that are attending schools, make their needs more visible, so it can highlight them and help us address the needs and make sure they're represented in that way. It also provides essential knowledge about early childhood mental health for all educators, and this is important when working with children of all ages. And added benefit of that is also that all educators are potentially better able to support families to enhance children's wellbeing no matter what the age is. In essence, it can support a whole community to achieve an understanding and also support children's mental health across the ages. And that sort of links closely to a question that we've had come up in the chat around how does KidsMatter support children who experience abuse during the early years of life. And I guess with that question, it's about drawing back to the risk and protective factors model, in that there are some things that within a school or an early childhood service that we have very little control of, but there are an awful lot of things that we do have some control of. So it's around what protective factors that we can put in place to support children. So are there a group of educators who do have a strong relationship with a child? Do we provide a safe and warm and welcoming environment? Do you want to add anything to that, Rita?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when educators, and I've seen this over and over again, when educators learn about early childhood mental health, they feel so much more confident. And when they feel confident and calm working with these children, then the children can feel confident and calm, are more likely to feel confident and calm, and it flows from there. So it stops us having always to go to get outside help, because in learning about early childhood mental health, educators find that they actually can work out a lot of the strategies and responses themselves. It's really powerful.
Yes, definitely. And we've got one more approach that we think people can consider using. Do you want to explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is choose your own topic. So this is a beautiful discovery that we made, that when services have particular areas that they're interested in, so they may have decided to start with KidsMatter, but their focus right now is on parent communication. So instead of starting with component 1, they'll start in component 4, which is about communicating with families. Or they might find that their focus is on early childhood skill development, social emotional skill development. So they'll start with component 2. So you can actually look around the topics and pick the ones that align with your interest and your need at that moment, and that makes it the link between what's happening in your service and what you're doing with KidsMatter a really good match, and it makes it really powerful.
Yes, thanks, Rita. And we're about to move on to, now that we've covered those different approaches, and remember you can mix and match them and do them however you want, but we're about to move on to some tips for making KidsMatter happen at your place. I just wanted to, there's been a question asking around purchasing our resources in the chat as well. I just want to highlight to you that these are all freely available on the website. KidsMatter Early Childhood is a funded initiative, so you can actually print or access the resources at for the cost of your internet connection and your printing, in essence. The benefit of signing up and registering for KidsMatter Early Childhood is that you have a facilitator who will help you along the way, but we'll talk a little bit about that shortly, about what facilitators can do. So let's talk a little bit about that notion that KidsMatter is about continuous improvement and professional learning, and what goes hand in hand with these things is change. So often when we're starting KidsMatter, services find it's a great time to actually get some space to think about your team. And Rita, we've both spoken about how KidsMatter can be developed around needs and interests and strengths. So one step in supporting this is actually around identifying that we all respond and understand change differently. So let's do a little poll and see how people in general think that you and your members of your team actually respond to change. Did you want to add anything about change?
Yeah, whenever we change something, you know, we always lose something and we gain something, and we go through a bit of a mishy period in the middle before we find our feet again. And that's, once I understood that about change, that changes can be confusing and sometimes chaotic, I became really much more able to work through change much more easily and was much more relaxed. I can see most people want to find out as much as possible before accepting the change, you know, and I think intuitively we all want to do that, but sometimes it's just good to jump in. And I have a little expression that says just start starting, because often we don't know what the change is going to be until we jump in and start trying it out.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'll stop the poll now, but what also comes to mind when I look at the poll was that there was an even spread, so it really does represent how differently we can all respond to that change as well. So first tip for making it happen, consider how we're all going to react to change. Second tip, and you sort of mentioned this, Rita, a second ago around starting something essentially. Starting is easy. So I'm going to hand over to you to talk a little bit more about that whole notion of starting.
So I think starting can be, we think starting is easy because starting can be the hardest thing to do, and really that is where your KidsMatter facilitator can help you. Because what we do with KidsMatter is that we really coach you along in tiny baby steps so you can get started. You don't have to have the whole thing in your mind. You don't have to understand everything about KidsMatter. Just collaborate with your facilitator and go, well, what do we want to do first? Let's do that, then I'll get back to you and we'll look at what we want to do second. So, yeah, so the facilitator will help you with starting. And the other part that helps you is to really go back to why we're doing KidsMatter. Be clear about your intention, and that can be a great motivator.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes it's about being clear about your reason, and I think you sort of touched on that then, but it connects to a question that we've had, or a comment actually. We've had a comment about how diverse reactions to change are across the team. I think the other thing you mentioned, Rita, was facilitators, and facilitators that play such an important role in the KidsMatter initiative. I'm going to read you a little story from an educator, and we'll pick up some of those themes in a moment. So it's clear we had a major roadblock. The logistics was proving challenging, frustrating, and a little bit scary. Then in came our white knight on a laptop rather than a charger, in the guise of our facilitator. She was very and easily accessible, and a calm, knowledgeable, slow and steady can-do approach inspired me. She also put me in contact with a community who had successfully participated in the KidsMatter Early Childhood Initiative and are an ongoing KidsMatter implementing service. They emphasised how important it was that each staff team worked out what was KidsMatter best practice for them and their community. Getting moving again with KidsMatter was all about connection with our facilitator and with another KidsMatter implementing service. So I guess for me, this really highlights that you don't need to be on your own in undertaking professional learning, and you can also draw on a pool of knowledge that is so much vaster than what we would be doing if we were doing it on our own. Is there anything you want to add when you hear that little story, Rita?
I just think it's absolutely true. Yeah, the services who connect with their facilitator do get that great support. Yeah, agree. All I can say is I agree.
And I really like that notion of the connecting with other services as well, because we can all beyond our experience too, which leads into some of the ways that you can connect. So we've got a number of different options for connecting. There are support and mentoring meetings, and these are conducted in the online space, and they can be done with your individual facilitators, but also we have lots of opportunity for networking events as well. Some of them are in spaces like today where we give a little bit of a presentation around different topics, and you have the opportunity to connect via chat, but we also have some video conferencing, video meeting events where you can actually get online and talk with each other and build on each other's knowledge. The other way around connecting online with each other is via social media. So we have a Facebook page that's quite active. We have regular shared thinking blogs that come up that you can comment on in that space, and there's always Twitter to follow as well. So we've had a question around, is coaching involved as well? And I guess that's a key element of what facilitators do. So you would access this coaching in terms of the support and mentoring that you would receive. And so the coaching is around how you're potentially going to undertake professional learning or key elements, but sometimes it could be around guiding to reflective practice as well. It's really about talking with your facilitators to see what suits your context and how to best engage online. Rita, anything else you want to add around that?
No, I've done quite a few video meetings with services, and it's really great when they start actually talking to each other, and I feel like I don't have to be there. So it's a really rich environment.
Yeah, I find we learn a lot from it as well. Our most recent webinar, and all our webinar recordings are actually available online, but our most recent webinar was around for educators sharing their experiences of their KidsMatter days. It's called our KidsMatter Days, the webinar. And it was fantastic to be a part of that webinar, but also watch it play back again, because in essence, you're seeing, if you watch that, you're seeing an example of how educators can engage in an online space and conduct reflective practice with each other as well. So not only do you get some great information, some great tips, but you're seeing reflective practice in action in a fantastic way too. So, our final tips for making it happen. So you've probably noticed that some of these symbols have been popping up, and these are the KidsMatter Way symbols that Rita mentioned a little bit earlier. There are 7 in total, and you would have seen a symbol around Learn Many Ways, and just the previous slide was a symbol for connecting. We've got these 3 symbols here around Be, Think, Feel, Do, Grow, and Acknowledge, and Consider, and Celebrate. And these are the things that are, in essence, really quite essential to progress through the KidsMatter professional learning. So with the Be, Feel, Think, Do, that's really about being aware of where you are and the place you're at as an individual or as a group or as a community, and really getting a sense of what you're doing, but what you're feeling and thinking about where you are in your professional learning growth and development, but also in the context of how your service operates and functions and how you work with children and be with children. The checking is really about identifying that there's always an opportunity for growth. With every new connection we make, every new relationship we have, there's an opportunity to learn and grow more. And another really important element around progressing through KidsMatter professional learning is to really stop and pause, to acknowledge and consider what you've learned, but also what changes have occurred as a result of that. And the final part is around celebrating that. And that might be receiving the certificate that you get when you finish when you complete a topic and putting it up on a wall, or it could be about having some sort of community event or just a team celebration of sorts around how to do that. Yeah. So we suggest that you check in with a KidsMatter team fairly regularly, every 2, 5 or 8 weeks, and you can either use an individual check-in point or some of the group networking events that we hold. And you regularly get advised of when those events are happening via our newsletters and things like that. it's important also to remember that you can focus on you can use any of the resources to undertake professional learning. So you look at the outcomes of what the professional learning is, and you also look at what engages you and your services in learning. So if you like lots of research and you like the research and literature reviews, things like that, there's things like that available for you. There's information sheets. If you like visual representation, there's KidsMatter Waves, there's Facebook post sharing, those sort of things. So there's something that will suit the needs and interests and engagement level of everyone as well. And we have a few tools that we can help you plan and monitor and document what you're doing as well, which we'll be going through with you at the KidsMatter Waves, not KidsMatter Waves, sorry, the Getting Started event, Ready, Set, Go, that you'll be signing up for post this event if you choose to continue on and see about starting the KidsMatter experience. So let's just move on to a bit of a summary of what we've been through today. So we've looked at the relationships and all the different ones that can be developed and ones that will benefit from being involved in KidsMatter. We've looked at some facts and details about the cost, about being online, and how KidsMatter is actually structured. So remembering it's a continuous improvement process. So within that there's a plan, there's a do, and there's a review. And we've also looked at 5 different ways that you could potentially approach KidsMatter, and remembering that you can mix and match those. And then the last thing we've just gone through is some tips for making it happen. Maybe if you want to just quickly summarise for me what those tips were.
Oh, so, well, yeah, I'll try. So thinking about your whole team, it's always easier to do something with a buddy and a friend. Also, who's going to help you with KidsMatter? Who's going to be in your leadership team? So if it's a small service, all of you might be doing organising KidsMatter together. So to start with, you want to talk about what KidsMatter is with your team and what it might bring to your service before you decide to actually go ahead and watch a video or use one of the resources. But most importantly, watch out for the end of this webinar for what the next steps are, and we'll coach you along step by step.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that, Rita. So we're going to ask you another question. We haven't asked you many other questions since the beginning, so it's time for another question. What essential information do you remember most about what we've talked about? Because we have covered a lot. So we'll pop the poll up right now. What essential information will you take away today? So we've had a question come up around, do you host face-to-face sessions in regional areas? I guess as far as we hold different workshops at different times throughout the year. Some of those workshops are on location, and our other workshops, our other events are on online space. So whatever form you choose to undertake it in, you will actually have a face in front of you, whether that's a face like mine at the moment on the computer screen or a face in front of you presenting. So keep a contact. We will have some links around where events are taking place. If the event if there isn't an event in your area, please get in contact with us. We can't always go to exactly to all regional areas all the time, but there are definitely other ways that we can help you get started and get the professional learning underway. And one of the things that we do find is that lots of people, once you get over the initial being online, seeing if that is something that you think is a bit, oh, I'm not sure about it, people really enjoy doing that. So about the next steps about if you are ready. So at the moment, we're at today, which is at the bottom of the arrow, just here. So today we've gone through some of the processes, some of the key information that's occurring. What we suggest you do from here is to actually go back to your team, your service, your school, your setting, and check with your team around whether they would like to be involved with KidsMatter as well. It doesn't mean that everyone has to be involved at once, but it's, like Rita said a little bit earlier, it's good to have a buddy or two involved in helping the process. It makes things happen a little bit easier and shares the load a little bit as well. So check with your team around whether or not they'd like to be involved to do it. The next step after attending today is to register your interest with us, to say, look, yep, we're ready to start our KidsMatter experience. So there'll be a form in the follow-up information that we send out to you that will actually provide you with that link. But I think Sarah might be popping the link up now as well if people are interested in registering. And then from registering your interest in starting your KidsMatter experience, it's time to you're ready and you're set, and then it's time to go together to an event. So we've got events, we have got some workshop events, and we've got a number of online events as well that people can attend. So you can attend with a few members of your team and get the process started. The great thing about these getting started, Ready, Set, Go events is that you will actually walk away from the event having Choose Your Professional Learning event, is that you will actually walk away from the event having Choose Your Professional Learning topics started and having some plans and ideas in place for how you're going to bring the rest of your team into the professional learning experience that you've done as well. So if you have any other questions around these 3 steps that come after today, please get in contact with us. We've got a contact form especially for getting started, so I think Sarah probably popped that up in the link as well. So thank you so much for that, for listening today and taking the time with that. What we're going to do is actually, this is where the last poll is going to happen. I was wondering why someone wasn't putting the poll up before, but I was wrong. So apologies for my poll person who's helping me out right now. So where to from here? So I guess it's about considering what your team would like to do. So we'll just give some. It looks like lots of people are taking this back to their organisation, and they'll make a decision from that. And the others, it's pretty well even. And there's something else in the chat as well. So I'm just going to have a quick look.
Yeah, while you're looking at that, Amelia, I just wanted to say it is really important to get your whole service engaged, and to really explain to them what KidsMatter is about. And if you don't have you don't have the words for how to explain KidsMatter, we actually have a really good little video on the website called "What is KidsMatter?" that you could show to your team or to your managers or to anyone in your organisation to share this information.
Definitely. So yeah, so we've got pretty much everyone is going to take this away and talk with their team about it. So thank you everyone for sharing that information with us today. So Rita, are there any final things? If you had to think about what is it that everyone must know before I finish this webinar, what is your 1 or 2 really essential things?
Sometimes I feel like I'm promoting, a miracle drug when I talk about KidsMatter Early Childhood. So I've been working in this initiative for over 7 years, and I have seen the most profound and wonderful and beautiful changes in services through implementing the KidsMatter framework. And so all I can say is if you want to improve anything at your service, the KidsMatter framework can help. It just is so powerful and so impactful. And good mental health and positive relationships, are the core to a happy life and make all the other things possible. So, I really encourage you, just starting. You're going to get so much leverage on everything else you're doing. It's like a yeast that makes everything else you're already doing work so much better. And I haven't heard one service who's gone through the professional learning who've said, gee, I wish we hadn't have done that. They all just say it's fantastic, it's great, it's marvellous. It's changed our lives. So, yeah, just starting.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Rita. And I guess just my key thing that I would like people to take away is that notion that this is a continuous improvement process, and while that's the case, it's important to stop and acknowledge what we are doing and see how our learning, how our learning has changed, our practices and our processes and things like that, which is a really important thing to do. But it's also important to stop and celebrate too, because what can sometimes happen is that once we start making changes, we see more changes that need to be made. So we don't want to be, sometimes that can feel like we're never finishing. So it's important to build in those points to acknowledge what's been done and what would be suitable. So there's been another question that's popped up, and we have got a couple more minutes. So if you have got any last questions, please pop them in and we'll respond to them. Being asked if this is appropriate for out-of-school hours care programs, and I would say most definitely this is appropriate. And Rita, my understanding is you've had some contact with out-of-school hours services.
I have. KidsMatter. Yeah, I have one out-of-school hours service who working with a inner city Sydney school, and they're implementing KidsMatter early childhood, even though they're working with primary age children, really successfully. And I've noticed those changes I talked about earlier, you know, in the atmosphere and in the relationships I've seen those at this service. So they're doing really well. But the other important thing to remember is that out-of-school hours services are often are working with primary age children. And I remember Amelia earlier talked about that pathways document, which connects KidsMatter early childhood and KidsMatter primary. So those out-of-school hours services can also access the KidsMatter primary professional learning and material. But if they register with KidsMatter early childhood, they get a facilitator to work with them. And so that's the key. But they can use all the KidsMatter resources from birth to the end of primary school.
Definitely. And just like KidsMatter Early Childhood Framework fits in really nicely with the Early Years Learning Framework, it also fits in really nicely with, and I've just lost it out of my head,
This is My Place?
Yes, My Time, My Place.
My Time, My Place.
I knew we'd get it
yep.
together. So it fits in nicely with that as well. So, and then all our facilitators are able. My Time, Our Place.
Our Place. Thanks, Sarah.
So that whole notion of bringing a whole school setting, and I don't know, but potentially an out-of-school hours care could then link in with their colleagues in the primary sector as well, or at least share some of the learning that they've been done.
Yeah.
And my other big takeaway, well, one thing that I forgot to mention, it's around being in that online space, around how flexible KidsMatter can actually be, is not only can you connect with us online, but you can connect with each other online. And Rita, again, I know you've got some really great examples of how educators use social media to undertake their reflective practice. Give a quick.
Yeah.
We are running out of time, but
in our last minute and a half, early childhood educators are great at accessing IT and social media, and a lot of services have closed Facebook groups for their educators, amongst other things, and they've put the professional learning through Facebook. They have their discussions through the comments section of the Facebook page, and so they, you know, remember I was talking about that there's ways to make time when you don't think you've got time, and this is one example of one of those ways where they can connect to each other reflectively through their Facebook page.
Yeah, and that really highlights how professional learning is so much more than just getting some information from a video or reading a resource. Yeah. So, I better get to the last slide, otherwise everyone will want to be going off. Now, I want to thank everyone for attending today. You will be receiving a copy of a link to a recording, so you can take this away with your team. Also, when you exit the webinar, you'll be taken to a page that unpacks the 3 steps of getting started with KidsMatter. So getting the essentials, getting set with getting your team on board, and then going to a KidsMatter event. So those stages are outlined again on the page that you'll be leading to in this space. So again, feel free to get in contact with us if you have any questions. Feel free to come back to next week's webinar if you want. If you think, I need to listen to that again. And who knows, Erica and I might say something a bit different next time too.
All right. Thanks, everyone. It's great being with you. It's been great being with you.
So thanks.